This is Green Street, the environmental health show, greenstreetnews.org, Patti and Doug Wood, and our worldwide network of scientists, medical professionals, authors, advocates, and others here every week to keep you up to date on what the scientists are learning about environmental health and what you need to know to keep yourself and your family safe and healthy in an increasingly toxic world. Welcome back. Pretty much everyone today understands we have a plastic crisis in this world. We're finding microplastics in every part of the world and in every part of the human body, even newborn babies. Understanding the health impacts of all that plastic has become an urgent issue for scientists around the world, while the rest of us try to figure out how to reduce our use of plastic. Synthetic clothing is the second largest contributor of plastic pollution in the world, right after vehicle tires. So decisions about the clothes we wear take on a whole new dimension. Given the rising concern about plastic and endocrine-disrupting chemicals, especially the dramatic new documentary on Netflix called Plastic Detox. Today on Green Street, we're going to reprise a show we did last year with author and fashion expert Alden Wicker, talking about plastic clothing. That's coming right up, but first, some of the news of the week. Patti, what do you got for us this week?
So I'd like to read about the environmental costs of war.
Oh boy, okay.
As the U.S. and Israel continue their relentless bombing campaign in Iran and Lebanon, the immediate death toll doesn't tell the whole story. What's left behind in the wake of this aerial bombardment is a toxic legacy that will last for years. Bombs and other munitions contain toxic substances including heavy metals, white phosphorus, depleted uranium, and dioxin that, in addition to causing horrific injuries, contaminate soil, water, and vegetation in the aftermath of fighting. Explosive weapons destroy buildings, generating debris and releasing hazardous materials such as asbestos, industrial chemicals, plastics, and fuels. Explosives also destroy water supplies and sanitation facilities, leading to pollution from sewage and solid waste.
Yeah.
In rural areas, bombing degrades the soil quality and inhibits agriculture by disrupting topography, forming craters, and altering drainage patterns. And unexploded remnants of war remain in the land and injure and kill people for years after the active fighting has ended.
Oh, man.
U.S. military bases contaminate their surrounding environments with oil spills and other toxic chemicals. U.S. military burn pits, open-air incinerators used to burn broken-down tanks, the detritus of weapons, computers, batteries, aerosols, metals, and many other types of industrial, military, and medical debris, contaminate the air, groundwater, and soil, and expose soldiers and civilians to dangerous health pollutants. So it's not just the body count of people on the ground whose lives are suddenly taken. That's the first drop in the pond, and as the ripples go out over years and years, many more will suffer.
It's so upsetting. I mean, it really is, this relentless bombing. Like we can just win a war by sending over our bombers and just dropping bombs on people, and that's just really awful news. Well, Patti, I don't know how to follow that. It's a pretty grim article and a pretty terrible situation. But I do want to let people know that in West Virginia, they passed a bill banning the use of synthetic food dyes, so that's kind of good news. Red, blue, green, and yellow are all banned now in items and drugs for sale beginning in 2028. Lawmakers also banned the use of these dyes in public school meals beginning this school year. Lawmakers behind the measure said the dyes were unnecessary and harmful, and they've been linked to behavioral problems in children. Opponents of the measure warned that the sweeping food dye ban, the first of its kind in the country, would drive up grocery prices. Opponents tried to exempt West Virginia-made popsicles, pepperoni rolls, and other items from the synthetic food dye regulations, but were unsuccessful.
Well, I'd eliminate those anyway.
I would eliminate them completely. Yeah,
Not
absolutely.
just the dyes in them, the food out.
The pending rollout for the statewide food dye ban was temporarily blocked by a U.S. District Judge Irene Berger after the International Association of Color Manufacturers sued West Virginia and school leaders, saying that the state legislature acted unlawfully by asserting their power over the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, which has authority to make food decisions.
So this is really interesting to me because the food dye has no impact on the nutritional content of the food.
No, it's just for color.
It's just for color.
Yeah, try to make food look more attractive than it really is.
And mostly for children.
Yeah.
Because children are attracted to bright colors. They're attracted to green and yellow and blue and red. So it's, and yet we know that they cause cancer.
That's why they were banned.
Wow.
Anyway,
Wow.
what else you got?
According to a recent study published in Environmental Science and Technology, children's mattresses can release an array of harmful chemicals that contaminate infants' sleeping environments where they typically spend a large portion of their early life. In the study, 21 toxic chemicals were released by the mattresses tested, including multiple phthalates, flame retardants, plasticizers, and other chemicals associated with endocrine disruption, neurotoxicity, and reproductive harm. These chemicals were not intended to meet inflammatory regulations and in some cases exceeded regulatory limits for countries where the mattresses are sold.
Wow.
The infant's weight, body temperature, and movement all influence the release of toxic chemicals, implying exposures are higher when the mattresses are in use.
Oh, great.
The authors of the study noted that regulatory gaps and lack of manufacturers' oversight cannot be compensated by informed consumers because labeling of mattresses is not mandatory. So there is no way to tell what chemicals might be in a mattress. When mattresses and other household products release toxic chemicals, they migrate to the surrounding air, the dust, and the surfaces, exposing children through the items that they interact with and even the air that they are breathing. Children are more vulnerable to toxic chemical exposures for many reasons. Their rapidly developing bodies are more sensitive to disruption, their skin is more absorbent, they breathe more often, and they are more likely to put their hands on objects in their mouth, known as hand-to-mouth behavior, and very typical for children.
Babies spend all their time sleeping. At least ours did. You know, when they're tiny, they're spending half their life
Well,
sleeping.
that's what it says. Newborns and infants can spend more than half of their lives sleeping. So any chemical exposure is going to be magnified.
Yeah.
Wow. But you know that there are a lot of safe organic mattresses
I was just gonna
available
say.
today where they actually do disclose
Yeah.
everything that's in those mattresses.
Yeah, I see lots of
And
advertisements for
if
organic mattresses.
You know, if you're not convinced, at least make sure that your baby is sleeping on an organic mattress.
even if you don't.
Even if you don't.
Yeah, okay.
Just
All right.
try that.
All right. Thanks, Patti.
You're welcome.
The clothes we wear tell the world a little bit about who we are. They often help form the first impressions people have about us. So most of us are pretty careful about what we wear. But how often do we think about the global impact of our clothes? Do we think of what we're wearing as having an impact on public health? Do we think of them in terms of sustainability? Well, we probably should. Today on Green Street, we're happy to welcome back Alden Wicker. Alden is an award-winning journalist, sustainable fashion expert, and author of To Die For, that's D-Y-E, How Toxic Fashion is Making Us Sick and How We Can Fight Back. Her book won the 2024 Society of Environmental Journalists Rachel Carson Book Award, and I urge you to pick up a copy at your local library or bookstore. Patti and I spoke with Alden earlier this week, and we started off talking about how most people don't seem to put two and two together. They know about plastic pollution and plastic as a public health crisis, but they go out and buy a closet full of plastic clothes anyway. Here's our interview with journalist Alden Wicker.
It's really hard for people to see a plastic item and think that it will break down with, the elements and whatever over time and become a health threat to us as it finds its way into our water and our air and our food supply.
You don't even have to wait for it to break down and find its way into our water and our food and our air. I mean, it's doing damage every step of the way, including when it's created and when we bring it into our homes, because all of these synthetic fibers, nylon, polyester, acrylic, they shed these microfibers into our home. Our home is filled with plastic dust, and a lot of it comes from our fluffy blankets and our clothing and our curtains and our pillows and on and on and on and on.
They did know this in the boardroom meetings, like back in the 1970s. They basically said, if we can sell recycling to the public, we can sell plastic forever.
Yeah, and that's starting to happen again in terms of textiles, right? So any recycled polyester you buy right now is made from water bottles. They do a little bit of fiber to fiber recycling, but there's problems with it. Collecting all of our used clothing, which has buttons and zippers and dyes and finishes and
sequins and paint and all kinds of things.
Yeah, there's so much stuff, vinyl, printing, all of these things. So collecting it back and getting it back to a feedstock is just far too expensive. It's far more expensive and difficult than just buying petrochemicals and turning them into polyester components.
But there are other issues, I think, also, which you probably know about and can share with our audience. And that is that once you have a new thing to wear that is made out of recycled plastic bottles, right? So you're wearing a polyester jacket or something, it's going to go through that same process all over again. And along the way, create more environmental contaminants, more micro and nanoplastics, and so on and so on and so on. I mean, isn't the ultimate goal to just stop using plastic for garment production? I mean, wearing plastic is not as comfortable as wearing cotton or linen or hemp or wool or, cashmere or whatever. I mean, why are we continuing to wear plastic?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely correct that plastic can only be mechanically recycled so many times before it just becomes low quality. We actually don't know how many times this could go through the process because so little of the plastic is recycled that we actually haven't pressed the limits of recycling this at scale to even reach the point where that has become a problem. In terms of the comfort of wearing plastics versus natural fibers, I really truly believe, based on the percentage of people who have skin sensitivities, psoriasis, eczema, chemical sensitivities or intolerances, I truly believe that there are millions of people walking around in their yoga clothes, their sports bras, their hiking clothes, their whatever clothes, and wondering why they have skin problems. And they don't realize that it could be connected to what they're wearing. And this is a thing where when I was researching my book on toxic fashion, I was sort of coming to it as a dispassionate outside observer, right? I was like, I'm not chemically intolerant. I don't have a chronic illness. So, like, I very much feel for these people, but this doesn't personally affect me. So I'm just going to tell their story and sort of put it together for people. And then I was doing this during the pandemic, and I already started switching out some of my yoga and workout clothing to merino wool or organic cotton, just like a little bit of elastic, because I noticed that if I sat in my yoga clothes or my yoga leggings for too long, I would get itchy and it was just like uncomfortable. And then during the pandemic, I stopped wearing anything synthetic because I could just wear sweatpants all day. And when I went back to wearing black synthetic workout clothing, it started causing me breakouts on my body. And I realized, oh, that I thought I had just suddenly grown out of having this skin problem. And I realized, like, oh, this is causing my skin problems. And it could be a few different things. I've also anecdotally talked to people who switched away from synthetics and saw their skin problems completely, their mysterious chronic skin problems that their dermatologist didn't know how to treat, clear up immediately. And there's science behind this. The dyes used for synthetic clothing, they're called disperse dyes. It takes a gnarly dye to penetrate into plastic. If you imagine trying to use RIT dye on a plastic bottle, you realize that that's not going to work. So you need something more intense. And so that's disperse dyes. And disperse dyes are known skin sensitizers. If you go to your dermatologist and you say, I'm having chronic skin issues, I think I have an allergy to something, they will give you a patch test where they put all these substances on your back, common allergens, to see what you react to. And disperse blue and disperse black are in there. So a lot of dermatologists or allergists, sorry, know this about these dyes, but also there's even more fresh research coming out of France, coming out of Duke School for Environmental Health, showing that these dyes are skin sensitizers. And then on top of that, you have any plastic that we have today, as you mentioned, is going to have certain endocrine disruptors in there or other hazardous chemicals in there. So you could have BPA, which is a hormone disrupting chemical that is used as a plasticizer and often found in polyester spandex clothing. You can have phthalates in PVC. So if you're wearing budget fake leather shoes or jelly shoes. Like if your kids are wearing jelly shoes, those are usually PVC and those can have phthalates in them besides PVC itself being pretty toxic. That's another hormone disrupting chemical. And so there are several health reasons why you would both have an acute reaction to wearing plastic clothing and sort of a longer term chronic reaction or absorption of these hormone disrupting chemicals, especially when you're sweating. And sweat has been proven to draw hazardous chemicals out of plastics, and they can do that onto your skin where you can absorb them.
Unbelievable that people continue to go to these cheap stores and buy cheap clothing and
Well, it's not
you
all
know,
it's not all cheap.
no,
No, no,
I'm sure it's not, but
Let's just talk
no.
about fast fashion versus, more expensive high-end clothing. And is there really any difference at all when we're talking about these issues?
Yes. So there is a difference. There is a price floor below which you are not going to get non-toxic, safe clothing. I'm talking Shein prices or like Amazon prices, Temu prices, that random brand that is advertising to you on Facebook prices. They've taken advantage of a newish system where there are no gatekeepers. It could be a random factory in China advertising straight to you. They ship it straight to you. Nobody's checking. Nobody's checking. They're not checking customs and border protection. There's no store that's checking for the quality or can handle complaints. Nobody's checking. From the time it leaves that factory, which is probably the kind of factory that H&M would not touch, and shipping it to your front door. So I consider those ultra fast fashion brands, as they're known, to be extremely risky when it comes to these things. I mean, every time someone tests them, they find lead, phthalates. There have been tests of Shein that have found lead and phthalates multiple times. There are Amazon brands that have had to recall children's shoes for having lead in them. And those are just the things that are illegal to sell for children. There's actually not a lot of legal protections in the United States for adults around this. So there you have that category, which is like, you're not going to find a $3 bathing suit that is quality, non-toxic. It's just not going to happen. But then you get into sort of the rest of the market. And I have to say, when you get into the rest of the market, the differences start disappearing. So you have expensive outdoor gear that is all synthetic and it is coated in PFAS, which, as your listeners probably know, is a class of highly toxic forever chemicals that are carcinogenic and, again, endocrine disruptors linked to reproductive issues. They're just bad and they never go away. And so you have these high-end brands that are super proud to advertise that they have a Gore-Tex coating on them. And Gore-Tex is currently being sued for claiming that their PFAS-containing membranes were an eco-friendly or a sustainable option, which is not true. And there are luxury brands that just don't care, and they will sell you nylon and blended products with acrylic and polyester and all of these different things. And they don't care. Like it's kind of shocking when you go into a luxury store, how many things are synthetic. The low end at just the fast fashion level, you could go to Target and look at their in-house brands. You can sort by fiber at Target. You can sort by fiber at H&M. There are other mall brands that you can look at, like United Colors of Benetton, that take a lot of care not only around the toxicity and the chemical safety of their clothing, but they allow you to search by material. So you can just check off cotton, linen, wool, all of these different things and order them or go in the store and try them on. And you can get things for $5.
So really interesting.
Fascinating. Yeah, it really is.
The fashion industry, really needs to get on board, especially with chemicals like PFAS, which never go away. So you can't wash them out of your clothing. And if you do, you're just contaminating water supplies and air with these chemicals. I wanted to ask you about some of these items of clothing that were combinations, okay, of like spandex and this and that and that. people say to me, well, I get these leggings, they're like 95% cotton and 5% spandex and whatever. Isn't that okay?
I would say yes. I used to have a contributor to my website, EcoCult, who had very sensitive skin and would react to synthetics. And I would have her try a bunch of stuff. And everybody's different, right? So some people can handle everything, some people can't handle anything. She was more towards the side of not being able to tolerate synthetics, but 5% spandex seemed to be okay for her. So you won't get stretchy clothing.
It's
You won't
100%
get
cotton.
performance
Right.
stretchy clothing without at least a little bit of synthetics. So the places where you see it, where it is really difficult not to have any, well, first of all, you're not going to find a bathing suit that's free of synthetics. You're just not.
Right.
Um,
And leggings.
Leggings, yeah. If you want stretchy leggings, I mean, there are sort of knit merino leggings, but those are more like base layers for hiking and things like that. Sports bras, especially if you have a larger chest, you will not be able to go jogging in even a 90% natural sports bra. Shapewear, you're not going to find it without synthetics. There are a few underwear brands that are almost completely synthetic free, but they kind of look like you would expect them to look. Um, so if you're into the sort of hippie flower child conservative look, perfect. But you're not going to get lacy anything without synthetics.
Yeah, it's funny. So let me ask you this. So you're in the communication business. How do you talk to kids about fashion?
Mm. Well,
I mean, what
yeah.
arguments do you think resonate with kids?
I think, I've been thinking back to when I was a teenager and I went to the tanning salon. Do you
Oh my
think long,
God.
like arguments about my long-term health and even beauty are gonna hit on a teenager? Because we know how teenagers are, right?
Right.
I think the only thing I can think of, and I have not tested out the effectiveness of this message, but the only thing I can think of is telling them the truth, which is their cheap clothing that they're purchasing is probably giving them body acne.
Really?
That's the only thing I can think of. And then also, I mean, like vintage shopping or secondhand shopping is very popular right now. And it's degrading because so much of what we buy now is garbage that what's flowing into secondhand shops is also garbage.
Hmm.
But secondhand clothing can be a way to find affordable and fun things. This natural fiber thing, it's actually an aesthetic, right?
Hmm.
So there's a couple of Gen Z aesthetics that would work with this, which is like t-shirts and street style and like baggy jeans and things like that. But I had a reader write in who's not a teenager, not a tween, not a kid, but she was saying like, look, I threw out all of my wardrobe, but I'm having trouble finding things that I like. Everything's very basic, and and I sympathize with that because you really like there are some things, like I said, that you're gonna have to give up. Like you're not gonna be able to wear meshy, strappy, like there's a lot of things that you're not gonna get aesthetically if you're just doing natural fibers.
Let's just talk a little bit more globally about this. Where does it go? What are the effects of it when it gets burned, right? When it goes to an
Mhm.
incinerator? What are the effects of it when it gets shipped somewhere and buried in, I think it's Chile?
Yeah, so there's a couple of hot spots that have been in the news for where our secondhand clothing goes. One is Chile in the Atacama Desert. And so they have a thriving trade near there. But the thing is that they just can't sell everything that comes in. And so a lot of it just goes out to a dumping ground in the desert. And then when there was a lot of media attention on it, somebody lit it on fire. And then the same thing is happening in Ghana. Most of the stuff that goes to Ghana is actually coming from Europe, not the US. But again, same thing. It gets there. The sellers root through it. The majority, like 60% of it is just not, it's not going to get sold. And so it's either thrown out immediately or thrown out at the end of the week when it hasn't gone. And they have landfills that catch on fire and burn. And so you have multiple things happening here where you have the clothing plugging waterways. There was an incident a couple years ago on Easter Sunday where there's this huge fish kill, and fishermen were split on whether it was an omen or a gift from God. But they were trying to figure out what happened. And there's a theory that they had just dredged these canals leading out to the ocean of all of this clothing and trash, and that all of that marination of the clothing and other trash that had all these toxins in it had flowed out to the ocean and caused the fish kill. So that's one route. And then there's like these huge sort of like giant ropes of clothing that are buried on the beach, like massive amounts of clothing that are buried in the sand on the beach, like more than you could ever, it's just miles of it. So it could be incinerated in a few different ways. One is, like I said, like just lit on fire in the dump. Let's get rid of it. Number two is used as fuel. Somewhere in Eastern-ish Europe, they're using it to fuel cement kilns. And so, again, it's not really incineration much as just burning it for fuel. And then you have incineration. So you have these actual incinerators in Northern Europe that are sort of burning it for energy and supposedly sort of taking care of the emissions and making sure that these toxins aren't going out. There's also dirtier incinerators in the US that are not great. So it's not only burning the plastic, which is bad enough in itself. So you can create dioxins in that way. You're also burning everything that's in clothing. And like we discussed earlier, it's not just plastics and all the additives that go into plastics. There's the dyes, there's the finishes, there's the PFAS, there's the PVC, there's the buttons and zippers and potentially lead and all of these different things that go into fashion. And that just all goes into the air.
Culturally, why do we have this appetite for just consuming so much in the way of fashion?
I mean, it's the same thing that drives a lot of our over purchasing, right? I mean, humans have always used adornment to celebrate, signify things about themselves, to protect themselves, all of these different things. So I would never go as far as some people to say that, fashion is a capitalist construct. It's not. It's part of who we are. I think it's literally just accessibility. That's it. It's just you can buy something and it will show up potentially the same day. It literally will take you more time to sew a button back on than to just get on Amazon and find the thing you need and order it to your house.
Alden Wicker, author of To Die For, How Toxic Fashion is Making Us Sick and How We Can Fight Back, an expose on the clothes we wear and how they're impacting both the worldwide pollution problem as well as the health of everyone on the planet. You can find a link to the book and learn more about Alden at our program website, greenstreetnews.org. That's going to do it for our show today. Thanks to our guest, Alden Wicker, and all of you who listen to and support this show. Patti and I will be back next week with another edition of Green Street. Thanks for listening.